this old book. A bestseller still. It's a story about an America where government's gotten so big and passed so many stupid and controlling rules that people say, enough. They stop producing for others. They go to a secret place and set up their own community where they're free to run their own lives. 4 of the main characters are Dagny Taggart, a businesswoman who runs a railroad. The villain, Wesley Mooch, a government bureaucrat who makes rules that control businesses. Orrin Boyle, a businessman who colludes with Mooch. And the hero, John Galt, an entrepreneur who leads a strike that gets the other productive workers to join him rather than obey Mooch's rules. The book is long, more than 1,000 pages. So how many people read books this long? Yet 7 million copies have been sold. I read half of it in high school, thought it was fun, and forgot about it. But then, after I became a consumer reporter and watched government fail again and again in its attempts to make life better for consumers, I read this again and I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was like the author, Ayn Rand, had seen the future. 52 years ago, she wrote a description of what's happening in America now. Explosive growth of government, an increasing number of Wesley Mooch-like rules. Somehow she knew what was going to happen today. If she could see it 50 years ago, why don't more of us see it now? John Allison is chairman of BB&T Bank, and you love this book, right? And you've used this in your own business by not making subprime loans and not doing eminent domain cases. I don't get the Rand connection.
Yes, we made 2 decisions that I think specifically relate to Rand's philosophy. One, when the Supreme Court dramatically broadened the use of eminent domain, where government power could be used to take the property of one individual and give it to another individual, the so-called Kelo decision, we announced we wouldn't make any loans for that purpose. And the reason for that is property rights are essential for a successful economic society. In fact, the single biggest thing correlated with economic well-being is property rights. The abuse of eminent domain is a threat to property rights, which is a threat to our whole economic system. And since we're a bank and we depend on property rights, we thought it was in principle that we should be opposed to that kind of abuse. We also chose not to do the so-called negative amortization, or what are called pick-a-payment mortgage. A pick-a-payment mortgage is where somebody borrows money and the interest expense might be $1,000 a month, but they only pay $500. Each month the mortgage gets bigger. At the time...
lots of banks have done that.
Lots of banks did it, and at the time you could make money doing it because you could sell the mortgages in the secondary market. We chose not to do it over a philosophical principle. Going back to Rand's concept of acting in our rational self-interest, we believe that it's in our self-interest to do the right thing for our clients. Because if we do the wrong things for our clients, it's going to come back and bite us in the long term. So we chose not to do those mortgages, not because we couldn't make money in the short term, but we knew a lot of young people were going to get in serious trouble and owe a lot more in the house than it was worth. So we said, we're not going to do this. And people left us and went to other banks, and that's their free will to do that. But we won't ever consciously do something that's bad for our clients. In fact, we believe if we do the right things for our clients in the long term, we'll be more successful. And that is very much a Randian concept.
Some people are so inspired by Rand's message, they've devoted their lives to its study. People like our current guests here. We have Huron Brook. He's president of the Ayn Rand Institute. Also with us, Professor Bradley Thompson of Clemson University, director of its its Institute for the Study of Capitalism. And again, John Allison of BB&T Bank. So, Professor, let me start with you. This novel is coming to life today?
It is coming to life today. In fact, there are many eerie parallels between what we see happening today and what happens in the novel.
Like?
Well, the nationalization of the economy, the attempt by the last Bush administration and the current administration. So there are scenes that are directly out of the novel. I mean, it's as if the novel were coming to life. So last fall, when Hank Paulson called 6 of the nation's largest bankers to Washington and had them closed in his office, and wouldn't essentially let them out until they'd signed the TARP bill. This is a scene as though it were straight out of Atlas Shrugged, when the lead character, Hank Reardon, is blackmailed by government officials.
In the book, you have collusion between Wesley Mooch and one businessman. You see that today?
Oh, sure. I would say take Jeffrey Immelt, the CEO of General Electric. General Electric is now spending something like $20 million a year in lobbying in Washington to get Washington to pass laws that restrict competition and favor his company. Not to mention the fact that he's also investing huge amounts of the company's money in causes which will, in the end, ultimately destroy American capitalism, like cap and trade.
And in return, he's received billions in federal guarantees and grants.
That's right.
Who is Wesley Mooch to you?
Barney Frank is the... it just pops it in my mind. You know...
Why?
Well, Frank is very explicit about his agenda. He's an egalitarian. He wants to see success destroyed in this country. He believes we are brothers keepers. He wants to take from some and give to the other, and he's very open about that. He's very ambitious. He wants power. It almost, it radiates from his face, the desire to control other people's lives. And that's really Mooch in the novel.
But it's in the public interest.
Well, and that's really a key part of this novel, is the attack on the concept of the public interest. There is no such thing as the public interest. All we have are individuals. And if you violate one individual's rights in order to attain some goal, the Atlas Shrugged says, Ayn Rand says, it is immoral, it is wrong.
All right, so you guys are all trashing, what the government's doing with taxes and all these programs, but, surely the government has to tax and do something. So, what should the government be doing? Should the government totally cease to exist? What do you think?
John Allison?
I think the government has a very important role. First, its real fundamental role is to protect individual rights. To make sure that Peter doesn't steal from Paul. And it does that in a variety of ways. One, it has to have a strong military to protect the United States from foreign powers. We need a strong police force to prevent people from stealing from each other. And we need a strong court system that defends individual rights, defends property rights, and settles legitimate disputes. So government is very important. It just needs to do the right things, not redistribute wealth from the productive and give to the non-productive.
Well, I'm a libertarian, and I want individuals to be free, and I want them to live long and prosper and all that. And I know the work of Rand and like the work of John Stossel, of course, but isn't Rand's attack on altruism crazy? I mean, do you really want to tell burglars and lobbyists and, say, union members that they're not selfish enough? They need to think of themselves first more and a little less of other people. Isn't that crazy?
Yaron?
Yes, we do, because what they're doing right now is not being selfish. It's not being truly self-interested. And this is the real revolution in Ayn Rand's ethics. Ayn Rand's ethics is not about the self-interest. It's not about doing what you feel like doing. It's not about doing what, emotionally, taking the cocaine because it's there, or taking the power because it's there. It's figuring out, and this is why being selfish is hard work. It's figuring out what is really in my long-term, rational self-interest. And all those groups, Bernie Madoff was not selfish. He was self-destructive. He self-destructed. He lived a miserable, pathetic life even before he was caught. So self-interest is not doing whatever whim comes. It is thinking about what is truly rationally in your self-interest. And none of those people who you mentioned do that. And if they did, they wouldn't be burglars and bureaucrats and so on. They'd be productive members within the world we live in.